What scientific evidence do we have for the existence of God? The discovery of Astro-Mitra could finally bring a consensus to this question. The 25 brightest stars in our sky were intentionally positioned to form an astrogeometric message for humanity, and this message was clearly communicated to our ancestors as it resonates in mythologies around the world. Indeed, our ancestors knew the geometry of this celestial matrix. Rediscovering the Astro-Mitra is an essential key to decoding the universal resemblance of myths. As it is our shared heritage, we have a duty to study it to understand its message. The Astro-Mitra is also the key to decoding the ancient temples, monuments, and observatories built since prehistoric times. Our probability calculations are unequivocal. The placement of the Astro-Mitra in the Earth's sky was intentional. Using computer simulations, millions of skies can be simulated using the Monte Carlo method. The strategy is to randomly place 25 points so that at least 5 pairs of stars are positioned within 1 degree of each other on the meridians of a specific grid. The probability is 1 in 1,890,000. See our calculations on the next page of Archeodoxa. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The matrix is far more complex, as it incorporates 4 astronomical spheres, even including angular distances fundamental to trigonometry. In this case, integer denominators of 360 degrees. And this is where the probability of a structure similar to the Astro-Mitra appearing anywhere in the universe becomes astronomical. We invite all probability mathematicians to present their calculations on our webpage, or by sharing their links. This is why the Archeodoxa website provides everyone with 3D models for studying Astro-Mitra, as well as a stellar database. In short, the universe is designed for the sky of Earth and its inhabitants. Here is a simplified analogy. Stars are markers, like the numbers on a clock. In this case, we see the Moon, the Sun, and 5 planets revolving on a sort of 12-digit clock. When we move away from this perspective, we notice that these 12 digits have very different sizes, positions, and distances from one another. The clock only makes sense if we are positioned at a very precise location, where the 12 angular positions are perfectly distributed. We can easily find the probability of such a coincidence occurring by randomly positioning millions of digits. Using the Monte Carlo method, we can simulate trillions of possibilities. Archeodoxa invites you to rediscover the Astro-Mitra and its astronomy in a way that is accessible to everyone. After all, it is our shared heritage. Let's see what the ecliptic is. Why does this line oscillate in our sky? We will see how the Astro-Mitra was designed to track the ecliptic on the star chart. Furthermore, we will easily be able to uncover part of its message. In our Earth sky, the horizon of our solar system appears as a barely perceptible line. Leave our Earth to see our solar system. The ecliptic is the horizon of our solar system. We perceive it with the naked eye, only through the Sun and the presence of the planets that orbit it. Our solar system is tilted at 60 degrees to the Milky Way. Keep in mind this value for later, as nothing of the Astro-Mitra is left to chance. The Milky Way is our galaxy seen edge-on. The constellations of the zodiac mark the ecliptic line. Zodiac means circle of small animals in Greek. Unfortunately, there are only 2 high-magnitude stars on the ecliptic line, Regulus and Spica. That's very few, and that's precisely where Astro-Mitra comes in. The Earth revolves around the Sun with a slightly varying tilt. Now, the Earth's axis of rotation is tilted at 23.44 degrees relative to the ecliptic. This obliquity is the cause of our seasons. Here, the spheres of the solar system are illustrated from a purely terrestrial view. Here, the relative speeds are not realistic. The Earth completes its rotation in 24 hours. The movement of the Sun and the planets is measured in months or years. The Moon orbits with a variation of 5 degrees above or below the ecliptic. Let's extend the illustration further. Fix the Earth on a vertical axis. With this reference point, we force the ecliptic to oscillate with a 24-hour cycle. This view aptly illustrates our daily life on Earth, in which we forget that we are rotating. By adding meridian lines to the ecliptic, we can define its 2 poles. The Earth's axis of rotation now points to Polaris, the North Star in Ursa Minor. On the right image, the north pole of the ecliptic, in orange, rotating around Polaris. Note for later use that the ecliptic pole is located in the constellation Draco. If you were in the Arctic, you would see Polaris rotating directly overhead. In winter, the sun disappears below the horizon for several months because it is located on the lower part of the ecliptic. In summer, the sun is on the upper part of the ecliptic. For several months, there is no night. Regardless of our latitude, we will always see the ecliptic oscillate. In the Arctic, as in the Antarctic, it oscillates near the horizon. At the equator, it oscillates directly overhead. In this regard, each mythological tale will have its regional flavour. Therefore, it is necessary to locate the oscillating ecliptic, and that's precisely where the Astro-Mitra comes in. Now let's look at the Astro-Mitra from two perspectives. On the left, we fly over its famous lines as if we were rapidly rotating around the solar system. Although fictional, this movement aptly illustrates the totality of stars compiled over the 4 seasons. On the right, we see the Astro-Mitra rotating at the latitude of London or New York. Each rotation therefore longs 24 hours. The lines of the Astro-Mitra conform to the meridians of the ecliptic, shown here in orange. They also harmonize perfectly with the galactic meridians of the Milky Way, shown here in green. But why such harmony and complexity in our sky? In fact, the Astro-Mitra is the enigmatic narrative that helps us find something invisible. The ecliptic and galactic poles had to be invisible, without being marked by notable stars, since they represent the invisible God and eternal life. Using the angular distances of the Astro-Mitra is like embarking on a quest for eternal life, just like the hero Gilgamesh. On the right, let's reveal the southern end of the ecliptic for an overview of all the lines. The Milky Way separates 2 worlds, the terrestrial world in green and the oceanic world in blue. See our previous videos on our Archeodoxa channel. Our modern scientists had not suspected that our starry sphere was intentionally designed with a geometric symmetry like the Astro-Mitra. For their part, historians had not suspected that our distant ancestors, dating back to the Paleolithic era, were familiar with this structure. Yet the Astro-Mitra is the key to explaining the complexity of certain constructions, such as the pyramids, or to explain the symmetries in the representations of constellations on certain prehistoric objects or frescoes. Before going further, we need to learn some basic concepts of spherical geometry. A great circle traces the longest possible distance on a sphere. Our Earth's equator is a great circle. All our meridians are also great circles, which, moreover, all converge towards our 2 equatorial poles. All these imaginary lines intersect the equator perpendicularly at 90 degrees. Our parallels, other than the equator, are not great circles. We can choose any meridian on our globe and find its 2 poles, which will have perfect symmetry. Each meridian will have its 2 poles on the equator. These lines are imaginary because they are a human invention. However, their grid is inspired by celestial movement, the sun, and the passage of time on Earth. This spherical geometry is therefore firmly rooted in nature, while being governed by invisible physical laws, such as gravity. The Astro-Mitra does not originate from any physical cause. 2 large, distinct circles on a sphere will automatically intersect, dividing each other into equal angular halves of 180 degrees. They form 2 meridian circles that share the same equator and the same polar intersections. Let's consider a blue circle intersecting the red circle orthogonally. Each circle will have its own poles located on the other circle. Here, the 2 poles of the blue circle are found on the red circle, and the poles of the red circle on the blue circle. All 4 poles will be positioned on the equator, shown here in green, and separated by 4 angular distances of 90 degrees. A reminder, the center point of the sphere represents the observer on Earth. From this center, we measure an angle between 2 sighting points on the sphere. This arc on the sphere will be an angular distance of equal value. A bucket with a hinged handle can be used to teach the geometry of the celestial sphere. To draw water from the bottom of a well, the 2 hinges must be symmetrically opposed, at 180 degrees along the 2 angular arcs. Under the weight of the water, the handle rests at a 90-degree angle to the rim of the bucket, preventing it from tipping over. To reach this equilibrium, the rope must also be able to slide to the point of symmetry of the handle. This means 2 angular distances of 90 degrees towards each hinge. The rope becomes a pole, with the circular rim of the bucket as its equator. The meaning of the tree of life, like the Sumerian hulupu, sometimes depicted on buckets, becomes clear. If two joints are not symmetrically placed, the bucket loses its balance. The bucket can also be used to represent an infinite number of meridians sharing the same poles. It can even illustrate their respective equators. The basket can also be a useful teaching tool, even without a hinged handle. Its durability lies in its symmetry around its circumference. Buckets with handles appear in myths from around the world. Understanding the symmetry of the Astro-Mitra sheds light on this. As we will see, several stars and constellations have their mirror image along the relevant celestial poles. This stellar symmetry was engraved as a symbol of justice and a measure of fair weight for market scales. The symbolism of the mysterious sites of Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe in Turkey can be explained by the symmetry of the Astro-Mitra. We recommend watching our video on the Anzu line to understand part of this symmetry.